When a secret heiress disguises herself as a cleaner to escape her gilded cage, she collides with the last man who should ever discover the truth, her family's cold, arrogant CEO who treats her like she's invisible. But tomorrow morning, she'll walk into his boardroom as his new boss. The polyester uniform scratched against Julie Clark's skin like a warning. She stood in the service entrance of the Grandview estate, clutching a bucket of cleaning supplies with hands that had never touched a mop in her 28 years. The July heat made the cheap fabric cling to her back, and she could smell the industrial-strength detergent wafting from the cart beside her. It smelled like freedom. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here for this story. It's one of those tales that'll make your heart race and maybe even make you believe in second chances and unexpected love. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing our global family come together. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button right now because, trust me, you don't want to miss how this unfolds. This is the kind of story you'll be thinking about for days. Now, back to Julie. She didn't belong here. Not in these shoes with the worn soles, not in this uniform with someone else's name tag still pinned to the collar. Julie Clark belonged in silk and diamonds, in boardrooms and galas, in the kind of life where people bowed when she entered a room. But that was exactly what she was running from. You the replacement? A harried woman with a clipboard and a Bluetooth earpiece didn't wait for an answer. Thank God. We're drowning. The Caldwell event just ended. 200 guests, champagne everywhere, and Mr. Davis wants this place spotless by dawn. She shoved a master key and a room assignment into Julie's hand. 3rd floor. The gallery wing. Don't touch the art. Don't take breaks. And for God's sake, stay invisible. Mr. Davis has a reputation. The woman disappeared before Julie could respond. Stay invisible. If only she knew how desperately Julie wanted exactly that. The estate stretched before her like a cathedral of wealth. Marble floors that reflected the crystal chandeliers, spiral staircases that curved like frozen waterfalls, walls adorned with paintings worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Julie had been to places like this 1,000 times. She'd hosted parties like this. But she'd never seen them from this angle. Never smelled the sour residue of spilled wine, or felt the grit of tracked-in dirt beneath her feet, or noticed how the staff corridors were painted institutional beige instead of the warm gold of the guest spaces. This was the world behind the curtain. And tonight, just for tonight, she needed to disappear into it. She pushed her cleaning cart toward the service elevator, its wheels squeaking against the marble. The sound made her wince. Everything about her felt loud, obvious, fraudulent. What was she thinking? She was Julie Clark, only daughter of Malcolm Clark, heiress to the Clark dynasty worth $43 billion. Tomorrow morning, she would assume control of Clark International, the conglomerate that owned everything from tech firms to real estate empires to this very estate. A laugh caught in her throat. She was cleaning a property her family owned. The irony tasted bitter. But her father's funeral had been yesterday, the will reading this morning, and by tomorrow afternoon, her life would belong to shareholders, board members, attorneys, and a corporate structure that had already tried to devour her whole. Tonight was her last breath of anonymity, her last chance to be anyone other than the Clark heiress. Even if that anyone was a cleaner named Marie, according to the name tag. The elevator opened on the 3rd floor, and Julie stepped into chaos. The gallery wing looked like a battlefield. Empty champagne flutes clustered on every surface, their rims stained with lipstick in a dozen shades. Napkins littered the floor like fallen soldiers. Someone had knocked over flower arrangement, and water pooled beneath a Louis XVI side table. The air still held the perfume of 200 wealthy bodies, designer fragrances mixing with a sharper scent of ambition and alcohol. Julie set down her bucket and stared. She'd attended the Caldwell charity auction before. 3 years ago, she'd bid $20 million on a Monet. She'd worn Valentino and laughed at jokes that weren't funny and smiled until her face ached. She'd been someone there. Now she was here to clean up after people just like her. You're standing still. The voice came from behind her, cold, precise, and sharp enough to cut. Julie turned. Larry Davis stood in the doorway like a king surveying a disappointing kingdom. She'd seen his photo in Forbes, in the business section of every major newspaper, in the quarterly reports her father's assistants used to leave on her desk. But photographs didn't capture the presence of him. 6'2" of controlled power in a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than Marie's monthly rent. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from marble and arrogance. Eyes the color of a winter storm, gray, merciless, and currently looking at her like she was a particularly irritating speck of dust. Larry Davis, Chief Operating Officer of Clark International. The man who'd built the company's European division from nothing. The executive her father had trusted more than his own daughter. And tomorrow morning, he would become her employee. But tonight, she was his. I'm sorry, sir. Julie dropped her gaze, heart hammering. I was just wasting time. He stepped into the gallery and she caught his scent. Cedar and something expensive. Something that probably had a French name she'd actually know how to pronounce. The agency promised their best people. I'm beginning to question their judgment. His eyes raked over her with all the warmth of a tax audit. Assessing. Dismissing. Moving on. She was invisible to him. Completely beneath notice. And God help her. It felt like relief. The Rothko needs to be cleaned. He gestured toward a massive abstract canvas on the far wall. Someone touched it with greasy fingers. Use the microfiber cloths. Gently. That painting is worth $8 million, which I suspect is more than you'll earn in your lifetime. The words landed like slaps. Casual cruelty, delivered without malice because he simply didn't consider her human enough to insult. Julie's fingers tightened on her mop handle. She knew that Rothko. Her father had bought it at auction in 2019. She'd been there when he'd outbid a Russian oligarch and a Saudi prince. And she knew, because she had a degree in art history from Oxford, that you never cleaned a Rothko with anything, microfiber or otherwise, without consulting a professional conservator first. But Marie wouldn't know that. So she nodded. Yes, sir. The Chihuly glass sculpture in the corner needs dusting. Don't breathe on it. Don't lean on anything. In fact, try not to exist more than absolutely necessary. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost roughly what a small car would. I have calls with Tokyo in an hour. I expect silence and efficiency. Can you manage that? Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. In that second, Julie saw everything she'd spent her life trying to escape. The casual dismissal. The automatic assumption that wealth equaled worth. The way powerful men looked through anyone who didn't serve their immediate needs. She'd watched her father become this man. Cold. Unreachable. Alone. And she'd sworn she'd never let the money turn her into this. I'll be invisible, sir, she said softly. Something flickered in his expression. Too quick to name. Then it was gone. See that you are. Larry turned and walked away, already pulling out his phone, already forgetting she existed. Julie released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. 12 hours. She had 12 hours left in this disguise. 12 hours before she walked into the Clark International boardroom and watched this arrogant, brilliant, infuriating man discover that the cleaner he'd just dismissed was about to become the most powerful person in his world. 12 hours before everything changed. She picked up her mop and got to work, a small smile playing at her lips. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting, Mr. Davis. Julie had been cleaning for 20 minutes when she realized she was doing it wrong. Not the actual cleaning. Her hands remembered the motions from watching staff her entire life, the methodical wipe down, the careful attention to corners. But she was doing it too well. Too precisely. She'd arranged the champagne flutes by size before carrying them to the service cart. She'd folded the discarded napkins into neat squares. She'd even organized the scattered programs from the auction into chronological order by lot number. A real cleaner wouldn't care about chronological order. She forced herself to slow down, to be less perfect. It was harder than it should have been. 28 years of Clark standards didn't disappear just because you put on a polyester uniform. You're overthinking this, she muttered to herself, then froze.
Great.
Now she was talking to herself. Very invisible. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, the cheap prepaid one she'd bought this morning, not the iPhone with the platinum case that was currently sitting in her penthouse safe. She pulled it out. Unknown number. The board meeting is set for 9 a.m. Carl'll pick you up at 8:15. Don't be late, Miss Clark. Tomorrow, everything changes. Her attorney, Richard Masterston, 63 years old, sharp as broken glass, loyal to the Clark family for 30 years. He was one of 3 people who knew where she was tonight. The other 2 were her driver and her best friend, and she'd sworn them both to secrecy. Julie deleted the message and pocketed the phone. Tomorrow, everything changes. The words felt like a prison sentence. She moved to the next room, a smaller sitting area where someone had apparently decided to recreate the Jackson Pollock school of champagne spilling. As she knelt to scrub at the carpet, her mind drifted where it always did lately, backward. Her father had died on a Tuesday. Massive coronary, the doctor said. Instant. Painless. As if that mattered. As if the manner of death changed the fact that Malcolm Clark, titan of industry, builder of empires, collector of companies like other men collected stamps, had simply stopped existing between one heartbeat and the next. He'd been 59 years old. Julie had been holding his hand. They'd been arguing, of course. That's what they did. What they'd always done. You can't keep hiding from your responsibilities, he'd said, his voice that familiar mixture of disappointment and steel. The company needs you. I need you to step up, Julie. Stop playing at philanthropy and art galleries. Stop pretending you can be normal. I don't want this life, she'd shot back. I never asked to be born into this. You built this empire. You run it. I won't be here forever. He'd said it casually, the way you'd comment on the weather. But his hand had tightened on hers. Just for a second. 30 minutes later, he was gone. And now the empire was hers. All $43 billion of it. The company. The properties. The investments. The responsibility that felt like drowning in gold. Her father's will had been crystal clear. Julie would inherit controlling interest in Clark International. She would assume the role of chairman and CEO. She would become, overnight, one of the most powerful people in the world. She would become him. The thought made her hands shake. You missed a spot. Julie jerked upright so fast she nearly knocked over her cleaning solution. Larry Davis stood in the doorway again, because apparently the universe thought she needed more tests of her self-control tonight. He'd removed his suit jacket. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk. A thin silver watch caught the light, simpler than the Patek Philippe, probably what he wore when he wasn't trying to impress anyone. Eyewear. Julie managed. He walked past her and pointed to a small stain near the baseboards.
There.
And you're using too much solution. You'll damage the fabric. She stared at him. You know about carpet cleaning? The words were out before she could stop them. Too familiar. Too questioning. Cleaners didn't question. But Larry's expression shifted. Just slightly, just enough. I know about efficiency and resource management. Basic principles apply everywhere. He paused. You sound surprised.
No, sir.
Most people in suits don't notice details like that. I'm not most people. That's definitely true, Julie thought. She'd read his file, of course. Back when her father had been grooming her to take over, he'd made her study all the key executives. Larry Davis's story read like a modern fairy tale, if fairy tales involved brutal corporate warfare and hostile takeovers. Orphaned at 16. Put himself through state college working 3 jobs. MBA from Wharton on a full scholarship. Joined Clark International at 25 as a junior analyst. By 30, he was running the European division. By 34, he was COO and Malcolm Clark's right-hand man. He'd built himself from nothing into someone impossible to ignore. Her father had respected him, possibly loved him more than he'd loved his own daughter. The thought carried old, familiar poison. You're staring, Larry said flatly. Sorry, sir. Julie grabbed her cloth and attacked the stain with more force than necessary. She could feel him watching her, assessing. The weight of his attention was surprisingly physical. "You're not from the usual agency," he said after a moment. Her heart stopped. I'm a replacement. Someone called in sick." Non-committal. Dangerous. "You're very well spoken for. For a cleaner?" The words came out sharper than she intended. The air between them changed. Charged. Larry's eyes narrowed. "I was going to say for someone who just started. Defensive, aren't we?" Julie forced herself to breathe. To remember, she was supposed to be invisible. Forgettable. Not picking fights with the COO of her own company. "I apologize, sir. It's been a long night." "It's about to get longer." He checked that simpler watch. "I need the West Library cleaned as well. The caterers spilled something on the Aubusson rug. It's a 17th century antique. Do you know what that means?" "It means it's worth approximately $400,000 and requires specialist restoration, not carpet cleaner," Julie thought. "It means I should be very careful," she said aloud. "It means you should get someone who knows what they're doing. But it's 11 p.m., and I don't have time to wait for specialists." He pulled out his wallet and extracted several crisp $100 bills. "There's a bonus if you can make it look acceptable by dawn."
Can you handle that?
Julie stared at the money. $500.
Casual tip money to him.
A week's wages to the woman she was pretending to be. She should take it. Marie would take it. But her pride, that stubborn Clark pride her father had always said would be her downfall, reared up. "Keep your money, sir. I'll do my job properly, because that's what professionals do. Not because you're bribing me." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Larry's expression went absolutely still. For 3 heartbeats, Julie was certain she'd just destroyed her own cover. No cleaner talked to Larry Davis like that. No employee talked to Larry Davis like that. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something in the same family. "Interesting," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Marie." The lie tasted like ash. "Marie." He said it like he was testing the weight of it, like he knew it didn't quite fit. "You're either very brave or very stupid, Marie. Can't I be both, sir?" This time he did smile. Small, brief, but real. It transformed his face completely, took him from marble statue to something almost human. "The library is through the east corridor. 3rd door on the left." He pocketed his money and turned to leave, then paused. "And Marie?" "Most people bore me within 30 seconds. You've made it to 3 minutes. Don't waste the achievement by destroying priceless antiques." Then he was gone, leaving only the scent of cedar and the feeling that something significant had just happened. Julie sat back on her heels, heart racing. This was dangerous. She was supposed to be invisible, and instead she was, what? Flirting? Fighting? Both. Her phone buzzed again. "Sophie, please tell me you're not actually scrubbing toilets right now. This is insane even for you." Sophie Foster. Best friend since Oxford. Daughter of a shipping magnate. The only person who'd ever treated Julie like a person instead of a walking trust fund. Julie typed quickly. No toilets yet. Just champagne stains and wounded pride. "Sophie, your pride or someone else's?" Undecided. Met Larry Davis. "Sophie, the Ice King himself?" "And?" Julie paused, fingers hovering over the keys. What could she say? That he was exactly as arrogant as she'd expected and somehow more complicated? That he'd almost smiled? That for 3 minutes she'd forgotten to be afraid of tomorrow? And nothing. "He thinks I'm the help." "Sophie, technically you are the help tonight. How does it feel? Like freedom? Like lying? Like both?" "Sophie, come home, Julie. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. I need to remember what the real world looks like. Before I lose myself in the ivory tower." "Sophie, you're not your father. You won't become him." Julie looked around at the destroyed gallery, at her bucket and mop, at the life she was playing pretend with.
What if I already am?
She deleted the message before sending it. Some fears were too heavy to share, even with Sophie. Instead, "See you tomorrow. At the execution." "Sophie, it's a board meeting, not a guillotine. You're going to be amazing." And when you fire Larry Davis's arrogant ass, I want to be there with popcorn. Julie smiled despite herself. She wouldn't fire Larry. She couldn't. He was too valuable, too brilliant, too essential to the company's operations. But she could make him regret every dismissive word he'd said to Marie tonight. Was that petty? Absolutely. Did she care? Not even a little. She gathered her supplies and headed toward the West Library, her mind already planning tomorrow's grand reveal. But as she walked through the silent mansion, something nagged at her. The way Larry had looked at her. Not through her, at her. Like he'd seen something that didn't quite add up. She'd have to be more careful. More forgettable. More. Miss Clark? Julie spun around, heart in her throat. A young woman in a catering uniform stood in the hallway, looking uncertain. She was maybe 22, with tired eyes and flowers still dusting her black pants. I'm sorry, I thought you were, the woman squinted. You look just like the photos. From the funeral. Malcolm Clark's daughter. Time slowed to syrup. Julie's mind raced through options. Deny it. Laugh it off.
Run.
But the young woman's face held no malice. Just exhaustion and confusion, and something like hope. I'm Marie, Julie said gently. Just a cleaner. But I get that a lot. Apparently, I have one of those faces. The woman's shoulders sagged.
Oh.
God, I'm sorry. It's just, I went to one of her charity events last year. She funded my sister's medical treatment. Leukemia. My sister survived because Julie Clark paid for experimental therapy our insurance wouldn't cover. Tears welled in her eyes. I just wanted to say thank you if I ever saw her.
Stupid, right?
Like she'd be here at midnight in a place like this. Julie's throat tightened. She remembered that case. A little girl, 8 years old, with the same rare blood type as Julie's mother had been. The mother had been. Past tense. Because her mother had died of leukemia when Julie was 12. She'd funded the treatment anonymously. Or so she'd thought. I'm sure she knows, Julie managed. I'm sure your thanks reached her. The woman wiped her eyes.
Yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, sorry for bothering you. These double shifts make me see things. She hurried away, leaving Julie standing alone in the corridor. This was why she needed tonight. To remember that the money meant something. That her choices had weight. That somewhere behind the board meetings and stock prices and corporate warfare, there were real people whose lives she could touch. That she wasn't just Malcolm Clark's heir. She was Julie. And maybe, just maybe, that could be enough. The West Library was a crime scene. Red wine, it was always red wine at these events, had been spilled across 6 feet of irreplaceable Aubusson carpet. The stain spread like a bloodstain, dark and accusatory against the cream and gold threads. Julie knelt beside it and did the math. 17th century. Museum quality. Probably insured for $500,000. And someone expected her to fix it with spray cleaner and prayer. She pulled out her phone and did what any sensible person would do. She Googled how to clean wine from antique rug. Blot, don't rub. Use cold water. White wine helps neutralize red wine. Call a professional immediately. Well, 3 out of 4 wasn't bad. She was on her hands and knees, carefully blotting the stain with distilled water, when she heard footsteps behind her. I thought I told you to clean it, not perform surgery on it. Larry's voice. Of course. Julie didn't look up. Wine on wool requires precision, sir. If I scrub too hard, I'll push the tannins deeper into the fibers. If I use hot water, I'll set the stain permanently. How do you know that? She froze. Mistake. Marie the cleaner wouldn't know about tannins and fiber structures. Marie wouldn't care. I cleaned a lot of carpets, Julie said weakly. Larry walked closer. She could see his Italian leather shoes in her peripheral vision. Custom-made, probably. And where did you learn about 17th century Aubusson rugs specifically? The internet is very educational, sir. Show me your hands. Her heart stuttered. Excuse me? Your hands. Show me. Slowly, Julie sat back and held up her hands. They were wet from the cleaning water, slightly pink from the cold. and completely unmarked by the calluses and rough skin that came from years of manual labor. Larry stared at them for a long moment. "You've never done this before," he said quietly. "Have you?" The question hung between them like a blade. Julie had two choices: maintain a lie or pivot. Keep running or stand still. She chose something in between. "I've done a lot of things I never thought I'd do," she said, meeting his eyes. "Tonight is just another first."
Why?
"Why what? Why are you here? And don't tell me you need the money. Your clothes are cheap but new. Your shoes have never been worn outside before tonight. I can see the department store sole pattern still intact. You speak like someone with education. You know things you shouldn't know. So I'll ask again, why are you here, pretending to be something you're not?" The accuracy of his observation was terrifying. Julie's mind raced. She couldn't tell him the truth. But she couldn't keep lying either. He was too smart, too observant. He'd pick apart every false word until her whole cover unraveled. So she gave him a truth. Just not the whole truth. "Maybe I needed to disappear," she said softly. "Maybe I needed one night where I wasn't who everyone expects me to be, where I could just exist, without the weight of it all." Something shifted in Larry's expression. The hardness softened, just fractionally. "Running from something or someone?" he asked. "For myself, mostly. That's the hardest person to escape." He said it with the weight of experience, like he knew exactly what she meant. Julie looked up at him, really looked, beyond the expensive suit and the cold exterior. What she saw surprised her. Exhaustion etched around his eyes, tension in his shoulders, the kind of weariness that came from carrying too much for too long. "You sound like you've tried," she said. Larry's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he'd walk away.
Shut down.
Return to being the Ice King everyone whispered about. Instead, he did something unexpected. He sat down. Right there on the library floor, expensive suit and all, leaning back against a leather wingback chair like this was perfectly normal. Like COOs sat on floors with cleaners every day. "I grew up in a neighborhood where having clean clothes was a luxury," he said, staring at the wine-stained carpet. "My mother worked 3 jobs. Died from exhaustion when I was 16. Her heart just gave out one day. Too much stress, too little sleep, too many years of breaking herself apart to keep us fed." Julie's breath caught. This wasn't in his file. This was real. "After she died, I lived in my car and finished high school. Showered at the gym. Studied in all-night diners. Made it to college on scholarships and spite." He smiled, but it was bitter. "I swore I'd never be powerless again. Never be invisible. Never be someone people looked through like I didn't exist." "So you became someone impossible to ignore," Julie whispered. "So I became someone people fear." He turned to look at her. "It's not the same thing, but it's close enough." The vulnerability in his voice was shocking. Intimate. Like he'd open a door he normally kept locked and bolted. "Why are you telling me this?"
Julie asked.
"I don't know." He sounded genuinely puzzled. "You asked earlier how I knew about carpet cleaning. My mother cleaned houses, hotels, offices. I used to help her sometimes after school. I remember her coming home with hands so raw they'd crack and bleed. She'd soak them in ice water, then go to her night shift." He looked down at his own hands, strong, unmarked, expensive watch gleaming on his wrist. "Everything I have, everything I've become, is built on her broken hands. And some days I'm not sure if I honor her sacrifice or betrayed everything she stood for." Julie's throat ached. She understood that guilt, that impossible weight of inherited expectations. "She'd be proud of you," she said. "How do you know?" "Because you remember. Because you still see the people everyone else looks through. Because despite everything you've achieved, you haven't forgotten where you came from." Larry's eyes locked on hers. In the low light of the library, they weren't cold anymore. They were complicated, gray, and storm, and something that looked almost like hope. "You're dangerous," he said softly. "I'm a cleaner with a bucket."
No.
"You're someone who sees too much." He stood, brushing off his pants. "I have a rule about getting personal with staff. I've never broken it. Then why break it now?" Because in 8 hours, I have a board meeting that might destroy everything I've built. Malcolm Clark is dead. His daughter, a dilettante who's never worked a real day in her life, is taking over as CEO. She's going to run the company into the ground. Everything I've sacrificed, everything my mother died for, all of it depends on someone who is born with a platinum spoon in her mouth and thinks charity galas count as business experience. Each word was a knife. Julie forced herself to stay still, to not react, to let him finish. Tomorrow, I'll have to smile and bow and pretend I'm not watching 30 years of my work circle the drain. Tonight. He looked at her with something like desperation. Tonight, I just wanted to be honest with someone who doesn't know me, who doesn't expect anything, who's just real. The irony was so painful it was almost funny. He thought she was real. He thought she was honest. And all the while, she was the biggest lie in the room. She was the very person he was dreading. Julie stood slowly, her legs shaking. What if you're wrong about her? She managed. What if she's more than you think? I've read her file. Trust fund baby. Art degree from Oxford. Spends her time at galas and charity events. No business experience. No board presence. No steel. He shook his head. She's everything wrong with inherited wealth. Born on third base, thinks she hit a triple. Maybe she's been preparing her whole life for this. Maybe her father kept her out of the company because he was protecting her. Or himself. Maybe she's stronger than she looks. Why are you defending someone you've never met? Because I'm standing right in front of you. Julie wanted to scream. Because every word you're saying is breaking something inside me. Because tomorrow you're going to realize how wrong you are, and I don't know if that will make this better or worse. But she said, because I know what it's like to be underestimated. Larry studied her face. You're full of surprises, Marie. So are you, Mr. Davis. The air between them felt electric. Dangerous. Like they were standing on the edge of something that could destroy them both. I should let you work, Larry said, but he didn't move. Yes, sir. And I should stop telling my life story to strangers. Probably wise, sir. But I don't want to. 3 words. Quiet. Honest. Devastating. Julie's heart was pounding so hard, she was sure he could hear it. This was wrong. All of it. She was lying to him. Tomorrow she'd be his boss. This, whatever this was, couldn't happen. Shouldn't happen. But God, she wanted it to. What do you want, Mr. Davis? The question came out barely above a whisper. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. Close enough to smell cedar and exhaustion and something electric. I want to know your real name. The request was simple. Impossible. Marie, she lied. Liar. But he smiled when he said it.
Soft. Sad.
You're running from something big. I can see it. I know that look. I wore it for years. Then you know why I can't tell you. I do. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek. The touch was featherlight. Reverent. One night. That's all you wanted, right? One night to be someone else. Yes. Then let me give you this. For tonight, you're not running. You're not afraid. You're just a woman I met who makes me forget why I built all these walls. His thumb traced her jawline. Julie's breath caught. This was insane. Tomorrow morning, everything would shatter. He'd hate her. She'd have to maintain professional distance. This moment, this perfect, impossible moment, would become a weapon they'd both regret. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, she was Marie. And tonight, Larry Davis was just a man who'd been lonely as long as she had. What happens in the morning, she whispered. The real world. Responsibilities. The roles we play. His hand dropped. But we have until dawn. That's not very long. Then we shouldn't waste it. He was right. In approximately 9 hours, she would walk into a boardroom and become his boss. She would watch his face change when he realized the truth. She would have to be Julie Clark, heiress, CEO, the woman he'd just called a dilettante. But for 9 hours, she could be something else. Someone real, even if it was built on lies. The carpet's not going to clean itself, she said, trying to sound light. Failing. Forget the carpet. You said it was priceless. So is this.
This.
Whatever this was. This moment of connection between two people who were both hiding from the weight of tomorrow. Larry Davis, the Ice King, the corporate shark, the man who'd clawed his way from poverty to power, looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. And Julie Clark, heiress, fraud, liar, looked back and felt the same. I need to tell you something, she started. Don't. His voice was firm. Whatever you're running from, whoever you really are, I don't want to know. Not tonight. Tonight, you're Marie. And I'm just Larry. Two people in a library at midnight. Nothing more. Nothing more. Everything. Okay, she breathed. Just Larry. He smiled. A real smile this time. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger. Lighter.
Free.
Show me how to clean this carpet properly, Marie. Let me do something useful with these hands for once. So she did. She knelt beside the wine stain, and the COO of a $43 billion empire knelt beside her. She taught him about blotting and cold water and patience. He learned like he approached everything, with intensity and focus, and the kind of determination that had built him from nothing. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. But when their hands brushed over the wet carpet, neither one pulled away. And when dawn came, everything would change. But that was hours away yet. They cleaned together in silence for 20 minutes. But it was the kind of silence that spoke volumes, the brush of shoulders, the synchronization of breath, the awareness of every inch of space between them. Larry was precise, methodical. He followed her instructions exactly, his movements controlled and efficient. Of course he was. The man had built an empire on precision. You're good at this, Julie said, sitting back to examine their progress. The stain had lightened considerably. Not perfect, but better than she'd hoped. I had an excellent teacher. He glanced at her. Both tonight and 30 years ago. The mention of his mother settled between them, tender and painful. Tell me about her, Julie said softly. What was she like? Larry's hands stilled on the cloth. For a moment, she thought he'd retreat back into his armor. But then his shoulders dropped, just slightly. She laughed at everything. Even when we had nothing, she'd find something funny. Burnt toast? Hilarious. Broken heater in January? An adventure. His voice went rough. She used to say that poverty couldn't touch joy unless you let it. That being poor was temporary, but being defeated was a choice. She sounds extraordinary. She was. He resumed cleaning, but his movements were slower now. Distracted. Her name was Caroline. She wanted to be a teacher. Had one semester of community college before she got pregnant with me. My father left before I was born. She never got back to school. Did you ever meet him? Your father?
Once.
When I was 14. He showed up drunk, wanting money. My mother gave him $200 grocery money and told him never to come back. Larry's jaw clenched. I was furious at her. We ate rice and beans for a month. But she said everyone deserved dignity, even people who didn't deserve forgiveness. Julie's chest ached. She taught you compassion. She taught me that strength without mercy is just cruelty. He looked at her. I forget that sometimes. In boardrooms, mercy looks like weakness. Compassion gets you destroyed. But you haven't forgotten. Not completely. How do you know? Because you're here on your knees, cleaning a carpet at midnight. Because you told me your story. Because underneath all that ice, you're still your mother's son. Something cracked in his expression, raw and exposed. I don't talk about her, he said quietly. Not to anyone. It's been 18 years and I've never, he stopped. Why is this so easy with you? Because I'm lying to you. Julie thought miserably. Because you think I'm safe. Because tomorrow you'll realize this was all fake. But she said, maybe because we're both pretending tonight. You're pretending you're not the COO. I'm pretending I'm just a cleaner. We're just people. Just people, he repeated. When was the last time you felt like just a person, Marie? I don't remember. Me neither. They were closer now. When had that happened? The distance between them had shrunk to inches. She could see the exact moment his gaze dropped to her mouth. Could feel the air change, charge, ignite. This is a terrible idea, Larry murmured. The worst, Julie agreed. Your staff. I have rules. Very strict rules, I'm sure. And you're running from something. Hiding. This can't go anywhere. Nowhere at all. We have until dawn. Then reality comes back. Then we should definitely stop talking, Julie whispered. His hand came up to cup her face.
Slowly.
Giving her every opportunity to pull away.
She didn't.
Marie? Don't, she interrupted. Don't say my name. Not that one. Understanding flickered in his eyes. What should I call you? Julie. My real name is Julie, and tomorrow you're going to hate me. Just don't. No names. Not tonight. He nodded slowly. And then, the door burst open. They sprang apart like teenagers caught sneaking out. Julie's heart slammed against her ribs. A woman in her 50s swept into the library, tablet in hand, Bluetooth earpiece glowing. She wore the kind of power suit that screamed personal assistant to someone important, and had the expression of someone who'd seen everything and was unimpressed by all of it. Mr. Davis, I've been looking everywhere for. She stopped, taking in the scene. Larry on the floor. Julie with cleaning supplies. The wine-stained carpet between them. I see you're supervising the cleaning staff personally? Larry stood smoothly, brushing off his pants. His face had shuddered back into professional ice so quickly that Julie wondered if she'd imagined the warmth from moments before. The Aubusson required special attention, Patricia. I was ensuring it was handled properly. Patricia's skeptical gaze moved from Larry to Julie and back again. I'm sure you were. The Tokyo office called. They need you for the video conference in 10 minutes. Something about the Yamamoto merger. I'll be right there. He didn't look at Julie. Also, the preliminary board materials arrived. I've set them up in your office. You'll want to review them before tomorrow's meeting. Patricia's voice carried pointed emphasis. The meeting where you'll meet the new CEO. Miss Clark. The name landed like a grenade. Julie busied herself with wringing out her cleaning cloth, keeping her face down, praying her hands weren't shaking visibly. I'm aware of the meeting, Patricia. Of course, sir. I just wanted to remind you that first impressions matter. Despite the circumstances of Miss Clark's appointment, she is still the majority shareholder. Discretion and professionalism will be essential. Are you implying I'm not professional, Patricia? The assistant's gaze flickered meaningfully to Julie. I'm simply noting that tonight would be an inopportune time for any complications. The subtext was clear. Don't sleep with the help 12 hours before the most important meeting of your career. Julie wanted to sink through the floor. Larry's voice went cold. Your concern is noted and dismissed. Is there anything else? Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line.
No, sir.
I'll tell Tokyo you'll be 5 minutes. She left in a cloud of disapproval and expensive perfume. The silence after the door closed was excruciating. I should, Julie started. That was, Larry said simultaneously. They stopped. The moment from before, the warmth, the connection, the almost kiss, had evaporated like morning dew. Reality was reasserting itself. Roles and hierarchies and the unbridgeable distance between a COO and a cleaner. Except it was all a lie. I have to take this call, Larry said, not quite meeting her eyes. The Tokyo merger is time-sensitive. Of course. I'll finish up here. Right. He moved toward the door, then hesitated. Turned back. What Patricia said about complications. She's right, Julie interrupted, trying to save them both. We got caught up in the moment. Too much honesty, too late at night. It doesn't mean anything. She watched something shudder in his expression.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything. You have a big day tomorrow. Meeting the new boss. You should focus on that.
Yes.
The Billionaire Heiress who's going to ruin everything I've built. The bitterness was back in his voice. That should be a delightful meeting. Each word was acid on an open wound. Julie forced herself to smile. Maybe she'll surprise you. I doubt it. People born with everything rarely understand what it costs to build something from nothing. He straightened his cuffs, every inch the COO again. Finish the carpet. Leave the invoice with a front desk. You'll be paid for the full night. Mr. Davis. That's all. Thank you for your assistance. The dismissal was clear. Absolute. He was putting the walls back up, brick by brick, sealing himself away from the vulnerability he'd shown. And Julie had no right to stop him. Not when she'd been lying the entire time. He left without looking back. Julie sat in the empty library, surrounded by priceless books and expensive furniture and the ghost of a moment that had almost been real. Her phone buzzed. Sophie. 1 hour until sunrise. Time to come home, Cinderella. Not yet. Sophie. Julie, you're torturing yourself. Come home. I met him. Larry Davis. Sophie, and he's not what I expected.
He's complicated. Real. And he hates me.
Sophie. He doesn't know you. Exactly. He hates the idea of me. The heiress. The trust fund baby. Everything he thinks I am. Sophie. Then tomorrow you show him who you really are. Julie looked down at her cheap uniform, her borrowed identity, her tower of lies. What if he's right? What if I am everything he thinks? Sophie, you're the woman who spent tonight scrubbing floors to remember what real work feels like. You're the woman who's funded medical treatments and scholarships and programs that have changed thousands of lives. You're brilliant and kind and strong. And if Larry Davis can't see that, he's an idiot. Or, I'm really good at hiding. Sophie, come home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you walk into that boardroom, and you show them all what a Clark is really made of. Julie typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on. Thank you. Love you. Sophie. Love you too. Now stop cleaning things and get your billionaire ass home. Julie smiled despite everything. Sophie was right. It was time to stop hiding. She stood, gathering her cleaning supplies. The carpet looked decent, not perfect, but acceptable. Tomorrow she'd send a specialist to do it properly. Tomorrow she'd have that authority. Tomorrow, everything changed. She was heading toward the service elevator when she heard voices. Mail. Urgent. Coming from one of the private offices. She should keep walking. Should mind her own business. But one of the voices was Larry's. And he sounded angry. Completely unacceptable, Richard. The board can't make that decision without. The board can do whatever Miss Clark authorizes. That was a different voice. Older.
Oily.
And I've already spoken with her legal team. She's very receptive to our suggestions. Julie froze. That voice. She knew that voice. Richard Sawyer. Senior Vice President. The man her father had never trusted. The executive who'd tried 3 times to initiate hostile takeovers before her father shut him down. What the hell was he doing talking about her legal team? You haven't even met her, Larry snapped. How could you possibly know? I know she's 28, inexperienced, and overwhelmed. I know she'll listen to advisors who help her navigate these complicated waters. And I know that with the right guidance, we can restructure this company in ways that benefit everyone. You mean benefit you? I mean benefit the shareholders. Which, need I remind you, I am. 5% is a significant stake. 5% is nothing compared to controlling interest. Controlling interest held by a girl who thinks charity work qualifies as business experience. Richard's laugh was ugly. By this time next month, she'll be rubber stamping whatever we put in front of her. And the first thing we're putting forward is a complete reorganization of executive leadership. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. You're planning a coup, Larry said flatly. I'm planning for inevitable reality. Miss Clark will need to make changes to establish her authority. It's only natural that some of the old guard, her father's favorites, might be transitioned out. You mean me? You've had an excellent run, Davis. But the company needs fresh perspective. New leadership. People who understand that. People who will let you loot the company blind while she signs papers she doesn't understand. Careful, Larry. Accusations like that could be considered insubordination. And the new CEO might not appreciate executives who refuse to support her decisions. Julie's hands clenched around her mop handle. Rage, white-hot and clarifying, burned through her shock. Richard Sawyer was planning to use her inexperience against her, to manipulate her, to fire the one man who actually understood what her father had built over her dead body. "Get out of my sight," Larry said, voice like gravel. "And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to let you sabotage everything Malcolm built, Malcolm's dead, and his legacy belongs to whoever's smart enough to control his daughter." Footsteps. Coming toward the door. "See you at the board meeting, Davis. Better polish up your resume." Julie scrambled backward, pressing herself into a shadowed alcove as Richard Sawyer emerged from the office. He was exactly as she remembered, silver-haired, expensive suit, smile like a shark. He walked past without seeing her.
Of course he didn't.
To men like Richard Sawyer, service staff were furniture. She waited until his footsteps faded, then stood in the hallway, mind racing. Tomorrow's board meeting had just become exponentially more complicated. Richard was planning to manipulate her, to use her, to position himself as her trusted advisor while he dismantled everything her father built. And Larry was the one person standing in his way. The same Larry who thought she was too weak, too spoiled, too incompetent to run the company. The same Larry who'd been vulnerable with her tonight, real with her. The same Larry she'd almost kissed.
This was a disaster.
But it was also an opportunity. Julie pulled out her phone and typed quickly. "To Richard Masterston, her attorney need full background on Richard Sawyer immediately. Financial records, associates, any communications with my legal team. Someone's been speaking for me, without authorization. I want to know who and why. Richard M. On it. What's happened?
Corporate espionage.
Attempted manipulation. Standard Tuesday. Richard M. You sound like your father.
Good.
Tomorrow I'm going to need to be." She pocketed the phone and stared at the closed door of Larry's office. She could hear him inside, pacing, angry,
Worried.
fighting for a company he thought was about to be destroyed by an incompetent heiress. God, tomorrow was going to be spectacular. And complicated. And possibly the most important day of her life. Julie straightened her shoulders, gripped her cleaning cart, and headed for the service elevator. She had 4 hours until the car came to take her home. 4 hours to prepare for war. And 4 hours to figure out how to save Larry Davis from himself. The car arrived at 8:15 a.m. exactly. Julie had been ready for an hour. Not because she'd slept, she hadn't, but because preparation was armor, and today she needed to be bulletproof. The woman who stepped into the town car bore no resemblance to Marie the cleaner. Julie Clark wore a charcoal Armani suit tailored to perfection, the kind of power armor that announced wealth and authority without saying a word. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon. Diamond studs, modest by billionaire standards, still worth more than most cars, glinted at her ears. Her makeup was flawless, subtle, expensive. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman worth $43 billion who was about to take control of an empire. "You ready for this, Miss Clark?" her driver asked. James had been with the family for 15 years. He was one of the few people who'd known her father as a human being, not just a legend. "No," Julie said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway. Your father used to say the same thing before every major acquisition." "Did he?" "Every single time. Right up until the day James stopped."
"He'd be proud of you, miss."
"What you did last night, wanting to see how the other half lives before you took the throne, that's not something he'd have thought to do." "James, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Did my father have enemies?" "Real ones. People who might have wanted him gone." James's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Every powerful man has enemies, Miss Clark. Your father had more than most." "Did he ever mention Richard Sawyer?" The driver's jaw tightened. "He called him a vulture in an expensive suit. Said Sawyer had been trying to get his claws into Clark International for years."
"Why?"
"Because the vulture thinks I'm carrion. Then the vulture's in for a nasty surprise." Julie smiled. It wasn't a kind smile.
"Yes."
"Yes, he is." Clark International headquarters occupied 43 floors of premium Manhattan real estate. Julie had been here 100 times, for galas, for charity announcements, for the rare occasions when her father actually wanted her to see his world. But she'd never walked through the front entrance as the owner. Security guards straightened as she passed. Employees whispered. Someone actually bowed, which was both gratifying and deeply uncomfortable. The executive elevator required a fingerprint scan. Her print had been added to the system at 6 a.m. this morning, per her attorney's instructions. As the elevator climbed, Julie reviewed her strategy. Richard Sawyer thought she was weak, malleable, a puppet waiting for strings. Larry Davis thought she was incompetent, a trust fund baby playing CEO. They were both about to learn how wrong they were. But Larry was going to hate her. The memory of last night, his vulnerability, his almost kiss, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious, sat like broken glass in her chest. She'd lied to him. Not directly, but lies of omission still counted. And he was going to feel betrayed. Focus, she told herself. Personal feelings later. Business now. The elevator doors opened on the 43rd floor. Her attorney, Richard Masterston, waited in the private corridor. He held a leather portfolio and wore the expression of a man about to watch his favorite gladiator enter the arena. Miss Clark, you look formidable. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Your father said the same thing before his first board meeting. Does everyone know that except me? He hid it well. But I was there. I saw. Richard handed her the portfolio. Everything you need is in here. Financial reports, background on every board member, the information you requested on Sawyer. And he's been courting 3 junior board members, promising them executive positions if they support his reorganization plan. He's also been in contact with your legal team, specifically the junior associate who handled preliminary estate documents. She's been feeding him information. Julie's blood went cold. He has a mole in my legal team? Had. She was terminated at 7 a.m. this morning. Good. What else? Sawyer's planning to propose a motion to create an executive oversight committee, ostensibly to support your transition, actually to strip you of decision-making power. Over my dead body. That's what I told him you'd say. He didn't believe me. Richard's smile was sharp. Show them what a Clark really looks like, Julie. Make your father proud. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders, became the woman she needed to be. Let's go to war. The boardroom was exactly as she remembered from the one time her father had let her attend a meeting. She'd been 22, fresh out of Oxford, eager to prove herself. He'd introduced her as my daughter, visiting from school. She'd sat in the corner, silent and dismissed, while men decided the fate of billions. Today, she walked to the head of the table. 16 board members. 15 men, 1 woman. Average age, 60. Combined net worth, incalculable. Combined respect for her, minimal. Richard Sawyer sat 3 seats from the head of the table, silver hair gleaming, smile confident. He nodded to her like they were old friends, like he hadn't been plotting to control her. And there, to the right of where she'd stand, was Larry Davis. He stood as she entered, professional courtesy, and their eyes met. For one heartbeat, there was nothing. No recognition. Just the COO acknowledging the new CEO. Then his gaze sharpened, traveled over her face, her hair, her eyes. She watched the exact moment he recognized her. The color drained from his face. His expression went from professional courtesy to absolute shock to something that looked like betrayal. His hands gripped the table edge, white-knuckled. Good morning, gentlemen. Ms. Patterson. Julie acknowledged the sole female board member, who looked surprised to be noticed. Thank you for making time for this meeting. I know it's been a difficult transition. Her voice was steady, clear. Nothing like the soft-spoken cleaner from last night. Everything like the Oxford-educated heiress who'd been trained from birth to command rooms like this. Miss Clark. Richard Sawyer stood, all false warmth. May I say how sorry we all are for your loss? Your father was a titan. Irreplaceable. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. Though I suspect irreplaceable is why we're all here, to see if I'm capable of filling his shoes. No one expects you to be Malcolm Clark, Sawyer said smoothly. That's why we're prepared to offer full support as you learn the complexities of. I'm not here to learn, Mr. Sawyer. I'm here to lead. The room went silent. Julie opened her portfolio and pulled out a stack of documents. Her assistant, hired at 7 a.m. this morning on Richard Masterston's recommendation, distributed them efficiently. These are the quarterly reports you're all familiar with. Profit margins, projected growth, current acquisitions in progress. What you may not be familiar with is page 17, subsection D. She waited while they flipped pages. Watched confusion bloom into surprise. That's the Luxembourg holding company that's been quietly accumulating Clark International shares through shell corporations. Over the past 6 months, this entity has acquired 3% of our stock. Not enough to trigger SEC disclosure requirements. Just enough to build a position. Larry's eyes snapped to hers. He'd found it. Understood the implications. Miss Clark, I'm not sure why this is relevant, Sawyer began. It's relevant because the Luxembourg company is owned by Kronos Capital, and Kronos Capital is a private equity firm known for hostile takeovers and asset stripping. She looked directly at Sawyer. It's also a firm you consulted for in 2019, isn't that right, Mr. Sawyer? The room erupted. Sawyer's face went red. That was years ago. A short-term advisory position. I have no current connection. You had lunch with their CEO 3 days ago. At Le Bernardin, you discussed opportunities in corporate transitions. Julie kept her voice level. Factual.
Deadly.
You've been feeding them information about my father's health, about the succession plan, about potential vulnerabilities in our stock price during this transition. That's absurd. I would never. You've been planning to destabilize my leadership, create chaos, tank the stock price, and allow Kronos to sweep in with a buyout offer. She turned to the rest of the board. Mr. Sawyer would, of course, be rewarded with an executive position in the new structure. He'd finally have the control over Clark International he's wanted for a decade. The silence was absolute. Larry was staring at her like he'd never seen her before, which, in a way, he hadn't. These are serious accusations, Sawyer said, but his voice had lost its oil. Do you have proof? Julie nodded to her assistant, who pulled up a screen. Emails. Bank transfers. Meeting notes from Sawyer's personal server. Your IT security was inadequate, Julie said. You might want to update your passwords. Kronos 2024 foot is not particularly subtle. Sawyer stood so fast his chair fell backward. You hacked my personal files? That's illegal. I authorized a security audit of all executive communications following credible threats to corporate stability. All board members signed electronic consent in their updated NDAs last month. You did read the documents before signing, didn't you, Mr. Sawyer? She had him. They all knew it. You're finished here, Julie said quietly. Security will escort you out. You have 1 hour to clean out your office. Any attempt to contact other board members, employees, or external parties about Clark International business will be considered a breach of your severance agreement and prosecuted accordingly. You can't do this. I have contracts. Your contract has a morality clause. Conspiring to defraud shareholders violates it. You're lucky I'm not having you arrested. She gestured to the security guards who'd appeared at the door. Goodbye, Mr. Sawyer. They let him out, still sputtering threats and protests. Julie waited until the door closed. Then she turned to face the remaining board members. Anyone else have questions about my competence? Silence.
Good.
Then let's discuss Q4 projections and the Yamamoto merger. Mr. Davis, you were handling the Tokyo negotiations. Where do we stand? Larry looked like he'd been hit by a truck. But years of corporate discipline kicked in. He straightened, opened his folder, and began his report. His voice was professional, detached. Nothing like the warm vulnerability from last night. But his eyes, gray and stormy and furious, never left her face. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Julie fielded questions, approved strategies, and demonstrated a command of the company's operations that made it clear she'd been preparing for this role far longer than anyone suspected. She was her father's daughter, and she was going to prove it. When the board members finally filed out, Murmuring amongst themselves, only two people remained. Julie and Larry. The silence was crushing. "You lied to me," he said finally. His voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely furious. "I didn't tell you the truth. There's a difference." "The hell there is." He stood, towering over her. "You played me. You let me pour out my soul to someone I thought was safe, uninvolved, real. I was real. You were pretending to be a cleaner. And you were pretending to be human." The words came out sharper than she intended. "For one night, we both dropped our masks. That was real, Larry. Everything else was just circumstances." Circumstances. He laughed, bitter and sharp. "I told you I was dreading meeting the incompetent heiress who was going to destroy my life's work. And you just let me. You want to talk about letting things happen? You called me a dilettante. A trust fund baby who thinks charity galas are work. You dismissed everything I've ever done without knowing a damn thing about me. I know you lied. To protect myself. To have one night where I wasn't Malcolm Clark's daughter, or the heiress, or the CEO. One night where I could just be a person. You used me." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "Is that what you think?" Julie's voice dropped. "That last night was manipulation? Strategy? What else would it be? It was me trying to figure out if the man I was about to trust with my company was worth saving." She stepped closer. "And despite your arrogance and your assumptions and your complete dismissal of me, I decided you were. How generous. Sawyer was planning to fire you. Did you know that? His first act after establishing his oversight committee was going to be removing you from the COO position. You'd have been gone by the end of the month. That stopped him cold." "What?" "I heard him, last night, telling you that new leadership was coming. He was going to use me to get rid of you, then position himself as the power behind the throne." She held his gaze. "I could have let that happen. I could have walked in here this morning, played the incompetent heiress everyone expected, and let Sawyer's plan unfold. You'd be unemployed, and I'd have someone easier to control. But you didn't."
No.
"Because despite everything, you're brilliant at your job. You care about this company. You're fighting for something bigger than yourself." Her voice softened. "And because last night you showed me who you really are. And that person is worth fighting for." Larry stared at her. The anger was still there, but something else flickered beneath it. Confusion. Hurt. Something that might have been hope. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "How to separate the woman I met last night from my new boss. How to trust you when you've already lied to me." "I don't know either," Julie admitted. "But we have bigger problems than our personal drama. Kronos Capital. They're not going to stop just because I ousted Sawyer. If anything, I've just declared war." She pulled up another file on the conference room screen. "They're planning something bigger. Something my father knew about before he died." The screen showed a web of connections. Shell companies, offshore accounts, board members at competing firms. And, at the center, Jesus Christ, Larry breathed. "That's not a hostile takeover. That's corporate assassination. My father was investigating this network when he died. His last email to his attorney was a request for forensic accountants and a meeting with the FBI." Julie's hands trembled slightly. He had that email scheduled to send the day after he died. "You think his death wasn't natural? I think the timing is awfully convenient." The implications hung in the air between them.
Heavy.
Dangerous. Larry's expression shifted. The personal anger faded, replaced by the cold strategic mind that had made him COO. "If you're right, you're in danger. They'll come after you next. Let them try." "Julie," he stopped. It was the first time he'd said her real name. It sounded different in his voice. Intimate.
Real.
"This isn't a game. If someone killed your father to get control of this company, they won't hesitate to eliminate you too. Then I guess you'd better help me figure out who killed him before they succeed." Their eyes locked. All the anger, betrayal, confusion, it was still there. But underneath it, something else was forming. An alliance. A partnership. Maybe something more. "This is insane," Larry said. Completely. We barely know each other. You lied to me. I insulted you. And now we're talking about corporate conspiracy and possible murder. When you put it that way, it sounds almost romantic. Despite everything, he almost smiled. You have a twisted sense of romance, boss. Don't call me that. It's what you are. When we're alone, I'm just Julie.
Can you handle that?
Larry stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell cedar and morning coffee. Close enough to see the exact moment his walls cracked. I don't know, he said honestly. But I'm willing to try. Why? Because you're right. Last night was real. The most real conversation I've had in years. And I'm not ready to lose that, even if it comes wrapped in billion-dollar complications. Julie's breath caught. Larry. The door burst open. Her assistant, professional, unflappable, looked genuinely shaken. Miss Clark, you need to see this.
Now.
They followed her to the executive office. Julie's office now, though she'd barely had time to sit in the chair. The television was on. Financial news. Breaking story. Clark International in chaos. Anonymous source claims new CEO unstable, company vulnerable. The reporter was reading from leaked documents. Personal medical records. Therapy sessions from after Julie's mother died. College disciplinary records from a party that got out of hand. Private.
Sealed.
Supposed to be inaccessible. Someone's destroyed your credibility before the market even opens, Larry said grimly. The stock ticker at the bottom of the screen showed Clark International shares already dropping in pre-market trading. Julie's phone exploded with notifications. Board members. Shareholders. Press requests. They're attacking you personally, Larry continued. Making you look unstable. Incompetent. Dangerous. This is Kronos. Julie's voice was steady despite the rage building inside her. Sawyer must have triggered a contingency plan when I fired him. The market opens in 40 minutes. If the stock crashes, you'll have a shareholder revolt by lunch. Then we have 40 minutes to control the narrative.
How?
Julie turned to face him. I need you to trust me.
Can you do that?
Larry looked at her, really looked. At the woman who'd scrubbed floors beside him. At the CEO who'd just destroyed a corporate conspiracy. At Julie, standing in the wreckage of a planned assassination of her character, refusing to break. Yeah, he said. I can do that.
Good.
Because we're about to do something incredibly stupid. Why does that not surprise me? Despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, the corporate warfare, and possible murder, Julie smiled. Welcome to the Clark dynasty, Mr. Davis. Try to keep up. For 10 seconds, nobody spoke. Then Julie started laughing. Not hysterical laughter. Not broken. But the kind of laughter that comes when the universe has thrown everything at you and you're still standing. Julie? Larry looked concerned. Are you? They think I kill my father. She stood, wiping her eyes. They actually think I murdered the one person in the world I spent my entire life trying to make proud. That's almost beautiful in its cruelty. This isn't funny.
No.
It's genius. She turned to face him, and something had changed in her expression. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something harder had crystallized. They've overplayed their hand. How do you figure that? Because I didn't kill my father, which means someone else did. And they're so desperate to pin it on me that they've exposed themselves. Richard's voice came through the speaker. Julie, the FBI doesn't file investigations based on anonymous tips unless there's supporting evidence. They have something. Then we need to find out what. Richard, I need you to do something for me. Something that's probably illegal. I'm your attorney. I can't. My father kept a private server. Personal files, encrypted. He gave me the access codes in his will. I know. I witnessed the document. In those files are years of investigation into Kronos Capital. Communications. Financial trails. Evidence. She looked at Larry. Evidence that probably got him killed. If the FBI finds out you have that and didn't turn it over, Richard started. They'll what? Arrest me for murder? They're already planning to. Julie's voice was steel. Get into those files. Find out who's really behind Kronos. We have 24 hours. I need a name. I'll need help. Someone who can navigate encrypted systems. I know someone, Larry said quietly. A hacker I used in the European division. Brilliant. Discreet. Definitely illegal. Perfect. Richard, work with Larry's contact. Find me the truth. She ended the call and leaned against her desk, suddenly exhausted. You're playing with fire, Larry said. I'm already burning. Might as well control the flames. He crossed to her, tilted her chin up. When did you get so brave? About 30 seconds ago. It's very new. I might panic again, any minute. Don't. I like this version of you. The reckless one who's about to commit several felonies? The one who's finally fighting back. His thumb traced her jawline. The one who stopped trying to be what everyone expected and started being who she actually is. And who am I? You're Julie Clark. You spent last night scrubbing floors to remember what matters. You destroyed a corporate conspiracy before lunch. You stood in front of the world and admitted to therapy because you knew someone needed to hear it. His eyes held hers. You're the woman I'm falling for. Even though it's completely inappropriate and terrible timing and will probably destroy us both. Her breath caught. Larry, I know.
CEO and COO.
Professional boundaries. Power dynamics. It's all true and it all matters and I don't care. He cupped her face in both hands. 24 hours ago, I thought you were going to ruin my life. Turns out I was right. Just not the way I expected. This is insane. Completely. We barely know each other. I know you took a bucket and mopped to escape a world that was suffocating you. I know you defended me when you could have let Sawyer destroy me. I know you cry when you talk about your father and get fierce when someone threatens your company. That's enough. What if we lose tomorrow? What if they vote me out and I lose everything? Then we lose together. He kissed her forehead.
Soft.
Reverent. But we're not losing. Because I just thought of something. What? The video. The one they released of us last night. You mean the one that's destroying my credibility? It was shot from inside the library. High angle. Professional quality. His mind was working. She could see it. That wasn't a security camera. I know every camera in that building.
Someone was there.
Filming us. Julie's eyes widened. Someone knew I'd be there. Someone knew you'd be disguised as a cleaner, knew which room I'd be in, and was positioned to capture footage they could weaponize. He pulled out his phone. Who knew you were doing this? 3 people. You, Sophie, and James, my driver. Could any of them have leaked it?
No.
Never. Sophie would die first. And James has been with my family for 15 years. Then someone else found out. Followed you.
Or, he stopped.
Or someone in my organization knew. Someone who had access to the estate, knew my schedule, knew where I'd be. Patricia, your assistant. Larry's face went dark. She was very insistent that I avoid complications last night. Very pointed about professionalism before the board meeting. Call her. Now. He dialed. Put it on speaker. Patricia answered on the first ring. Mr. Davis. I've been trying to reach you. The media is requesting comment on the video. Where were you last night between 11 p.m. and midnight? Silence. Patricia. Answer the question. I was coordinating with the catering team, ensuring the estate was properly secured after the event. You were in the library wing? Briefly. To check on the cleaning progress. Did you film me with the cleaning staff? More silence. Longer this time. I was protecting you, she said finally. Her voice had changed. Less professional. More desperate. That woman, whoever she was clearly trying to seduce you. I documented it in case she tried to blackmail you later. So, you did film us. For your protection. And then when I realized she was actually Julie Clark, that she'd lied to you, manipulated you, I had to make sure people knew. For the good of the company. You leaked the video. I shared it with concerned board members who deserved to know their new CEO was engaging in inappropriate relationships. Larry's voice went deadly quiet. Who paid you, Patricia? No one paid me. I was protecting.
Who paid?
You. A long pause. Then, they said you'd be better off without her. That she'd destroy everything you built. They were helping you. Kronos Capital. I didn't know that name. It was just a man. He said he was a concerned shareholder. He paid me $50,000 to document any irregular behavior. I thought I was doing the right thing. Julie grabbed the phone. How long have you been spying on Larry? Miss Clark, How long? 6 months. Since your father got sick. They wanted to know if Larry would be loyal to you or open to alternative arrangements. You've been feeding corporate intelligence to our enemies for 6 months. I was protecting Mr. Davis's interests. You were protecting your bank account, Larry said coldly. You're fired. Security will escort you out. And Patricia? If you've withheld any information, if there's anything else you haven't told us, now is the time. Because in about 5 minutes, I'm turning everything over to the FBI. There's one more thing. Her voice broke. The tip about Miss Clark and her father's death. They asked me to provide it. Said I should mention that she inherited billions, that she'd been pushing him to retire early, that she was alone with him when he died. Julie's hands shook. You told the FBI I murdered my father. They said it was just to create pressure. To make you step down voluntarily. I didn't think they'd, actually. Larry ended the call. For a moment, they just stared at each other. We have her, Julie said. Confession to corporate espionage, conspiracy, filing false tips. That's our leverage. And we have proof Kronos has been planning this for months. Since before your father died. Larry's eyes met hers. Julie, what if they did kill him? What if this isn't paranoia? She'd been asking herself the same question. But hearing it from Larry made it real. Then we prove it. And we destroy them. Her phone buzzed.
Sophie,
turn on Channel 7.
now.
Julie grabbed the remote and switched on the television in her office. Janet Reeves, the Wall Street Journal columnist who'd applauded at the press conference, was on a financial news show. What we're seeing is a coordinated attack on a young woman who dared to be human in an industry that demands robots. Julie Clark admitted to therapy.
To grief.
To being imperfect. And within hours, she's being crucified for it. I've covered Wall Street for 30 years, and I've never seen such a vicious, targeted campaign. The anchor. Some say she's simply unqualified. Some are lying. I've done my research. Julie Clark has an MBA from Oxford, 6 years running a $200 million foundation with better returns than most hedge funds, and a vision for corporate responsibility that this industry desperately needs. The real question isn't whether she's qualified. It's who's so threatened by her that they'd leak medical records and manufacture scandals. You think this is orchestrated? I know it is. And I'm not the only one asking questions. The screen split. 3 more financial journalists joined the panel. The timeline is suspicious, one said. She fires Richard Sawyer for corporate espionage at 9 a.m. By 10 a.m., sealed medical records are leaked. By noon, a relationship scandal breaks. That's not organic. That's planned. And the shareholder petition, another added. It gathered 40% of required signatures in 3 hours. That's statistically impossible without massive coordination. Janet leaned into the camera. Someone is trying to destroy Julie Clark. And until we know who and why, every investor should be asking themselves, do you want to be on the side trying to tear down a woman for being honest? Or do you want to support someone who might actually change this industry for the better? The segment ended. Julie's phone exploded with notifications. But this time, they were different. Messages of support. Investors pledging to vote against the petition. Employees organizing rallies. The stock ticker started climbing again. You're getting a second wind, Larry said, reading over her shoulder. We're getting a second wind, she corrected. This isn't me anymore. It's us. He pulled her close. Then let's finish this. Together. Tomorrow at noon they vote. We have 18 hours to find out who killed my father and save this company. No pressure. None at all. She looked up at him. Larry?
Thank you.
For not running when you had the chance. I tried running for 18 years. It just made me lonely.
He kissed her then. Soft. Sure.
Full of promise. No more running. Not from this. Not from you. When they pulled apart, the sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the city in gold and shadow. Tomorrow would bring war. But tonight, they had each other. And they had hope. And sometimes that was enough. At 3 a.m., Larry's hacker found the smoking gun. Julie was running on coffee and adrenaline when her phone rang. She and Larry were still in her office, surrounded by documents, financial records, and the detritus of 18 years of corporate warfare. "We're in," a voice said. Young. Female. Accent that suggested Eastern Europe. "Your father's encrypted files are extensive." "What did you find?" Julie put it on speaker. "Everything. Wire transfers from shell companies in Luxembourg, Grand Cayman, Singapore. All flowing back to a single source. But it's buried under so many corporate layers it took me 4 hours to trace."
Who?
Larry leaned forward. "That's the interesting part. Kronos Capital is owned by a holding company called Meridian Group. Meridian is owned by Fortress Holdings. Fortress is owned by a trust in the Cook Islands. And that trust," the hacker paused for dramatic effect, "is controlled by 3 trustees. Richard Sawyer is one." "We knew Sawyer was involved," Julie said.
Yes.
"But the other 2 trustees are more interesting. One is a man named Wei Zhao, Chinese industrialist, your father's competitor in the Asian markets. And the third," another pause, longer this time. "According to the trust documents filed in 2019, the third trustee is Patricia Davis." Larry went white. "That's impossible. Patricia's maiden name was Davis. We're not related." "Not Patricia, your assistant. Patricia Davis, formerly Patricia Davis Ashford. Currently known as Patricia Patterson." The room tilted. "Patterson," Julie whispered. "The board member who resigned this morning. One of my father's reform bloc. She's been married 3 times, the hacker continued. First to Jonathan Davis, relation to Larry unknown. Second to Marcus Ashford, tech executive who died in 2015 under suspicious circumstances. Third to David Patterson, who conveniently sits on 4 major corporate boards. She kept all the last names. Uses whichever one suits her purposes." Larry was already pulling up files. "Patricia Patterson joined our board 18 months ago. Your father recruited her personally. Said she was a voice for progressive reform." "She was a Trojan horse," Julie breathed. "She got close to my father, learned his routines, his health issues, his investigation into Kronos. Then she helped Sawyer and Wei Zhao plan the takeover." "It's worse than that." The hacker's voice was grim. "I found emails between Patricia Patterson and a doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital, the cardiologist who treated your father." Julie's blood turned to ice. "What kind of emails?" "Medical records. Details about your father's heart condition, medications he was taking, and suggestions for adjustments." Adjustments? The wrong dosage of blood thinners combined with the right trigger, stress, overexertion, could induce a coronary event that looks completely natural. The hacker paused. "Miss Clark, I think they murdered your father. And I think this doctor helped them do it." The words hung in the air like poison. Larry grabbed Julie's hand. She was shaking. "Send everything to Richard Masterston," she managed. "And to the FBI. Both the corporate fraud and the murder evidence." "Already done. But Miss Clark? The board vote is in 9 hours. Even with this evidence, you need a strategy." "I have one." Julie's voice was steady now.
Cold.
"I'm going to make Patricia Patterson confess in front of everyone." At 11:45 a.m., the Clark International boardroom was packed. 16 board members, minus the 3 who'd resigned. Shareholders' representatives. Attorneys. The press, allowed in by special vote to ensure transparency. And sitting in the 3rd seat from the head of the table, perfectly composed in Chanel and pearls, Patricia Patterson. She smiled at Julie as the young CEO entered.
Warm.
Supportive. The mask of a trusted ally. Julie smiled back and took her seat at the head of the table for what might be the last time. Thank you all for coming, she began. I know the past 48 hours have been turbulent. I know many of you have questions about my leadership, my judgment, my fitness to run this company. Murmurs of agreement. Some sympathetic. Most hostile. Before we vote, I want to share something my father left me. A final gift. She nodded to her assistant, who wheeled in a large screen. In his last weeks, my father was investigating corporate espionage. He suspected someone on this board was working with outside interests to destabilize Clark International. He gathered evidence, encrypted it, and left it for me to find. Patricia's smile didn't waver, but her hand tightened on her pen. I spent last night reviewing that evidence, and I found something remarkable. Julie clicked the remote. Financial records filled the screen. This is the ownership structure of Kronos Capital, the entity that's been acquiring our stock, manipulating our share price, and orchestrating attacks on our company. She clicked through the layers. Shell companies, offshore accounts, all leading to the Cook Islands Trust. And these are the trustees who control Kronos. 3 names appeared. Richard Sawyer, Wei Zhao, Patricia Davis, aka Patricia Patterson. The room erupted. Patricia stood smoothly. This is absurd. I've been a loyal board member. You've been a spy. Julie's voice cut through the chaos. You joined this board 18 months ago with one purpose, to help Kronos Capital take over this company. You befriended my father, gained his trust, learned his weaknesses. These are wild accusations from a desperate woman. You had access to his medical information. You knew about his heart condition. You knew exactly how to trigger a fatal cardiac event. Julie clicked to the next slide. Emails between Patricia and the doctor. And you coordinated with a physician at Mount Sinai to ensure my father's medications were adjusted. The silence was absolute. Patricia's composure cracked. Just slightly. You can't prove. The FBI has the doctor in custody. He's talking about the money you paid him, about the instructions you gave him, about how you told him it was for the good of the company, that Malcolm Clark was standing in the way of progress. He's lying to save himself. Your assistant kept copies of everything. Wire transfers, meeting notes. She's already turned state's evidence in exchange for immunity. Julie stood. You kill my father, and then you tried to frame me for it. How much did Kronos pay you, Patricia? What's the going rate for murder these days? Patricia's face went red, then white. You stupid little girl. You think you've won? You think exposing me changes anything? The mask was gone. Pure venom remained. Your father was weak. Sentimental. He could have made billions in the Asian markets, but he refused to use the tactics necessary. He could have crushed competitors, but he played fair. He was a dinosaur, and he was holding this company back. So you killed him. I freed this company from outdated morality. Patricia slammed her hand on the table. Malcolm Clark was a relic. You're a child playing dress-up. This empire deserves leadership that understands power. Real power. Not your father's pathetic legacy of ethics and responsibility. You're right, Julie said quietly. My father did believe in ethics, in responsibility, in building something that mattered beyond profit margins. And you murdered him for it. She clicked to the final slide. A video. Security footage from the estate. Time-stamped from the night of the Caldwell event. It showed Patricia entering Malcolm Clark's private office 6 weeks before his death. Showed her accessing his personal safe, the one with medical records and medications. Showed her leaving 20 minutes later with something in her purse. You stole his medication that night. Replaced it with altered dosages. And 3 weeks later, during a particularly stressful board meeting about the Kronos investigation, my father's heart gave out. Julie's voice broke. He died thinking it was natural, never knowing his trusted board member had murdered him. Patricia looked around the room, at the board members staring at her in horror, at the cameras recording everything, at the FBI agents entering through the back door. This isn't over, she hissed. Kronos is bigger than me. Bigger than you. You've won a battle, not the war. Maybe, Julie acknowledged. But I've won today. And that's enough. The FBI took Patricia into custody. She was still screaming threats as they led her away. In the silence after she left, the board members looked at each other. Then at Julie. I believe, said Janet Reeves, who'd been invited as an observer. We have a vote to conduct. The board chairman cleared his throat. All in favor of the no-confidence motion against CEO Julie Clark? Silence. All opposed. Every hand went up. Even the ones who'd supported the petition yesterday. The motion fails. Julie Clark retains her position as chairman and CEO of Clark International. The relief was crushing. Julie sat down hard, legs shaking. Larry was at her side immediately. You did it. We did it. She looked at the board. I know many of you have doubts. I know I'm young and untested. But I promise you this. I will fight for this company the way my father did. With honor. With integrity. And with the understanding that we're not just here to make money. We're here to build something that matters. What's your first move as CEO? Someone asked. Julie looked at Larry. Then back at the board. My first move is to promote Larry Davis to President and Chief Operating Officer. He'll have expanded authority over all divisions. Because I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And I'm secure enough to surround myself with people who make me better. Larry's eyes widened. Julie. My second move is to launch a full ethics review. Every board member, every executive, every major decision from the past 5 years. We're cleaning house. Anyone who can't meet the highest standards can leave voluntarily, or I'll help them out the door. She stood, drawing strength from somewhere deep. And my third move is to establish the Malcolm Clark Foundation for Corporate Responsibility. 20% of all profits will fund programs for ethical business practices, employee welfare, and community development. My father built this empire. I'm going to make sure it actually deserves the legacy he left. The applause started slowly, then built, until the entire boardroom was on its feet. Julie had won. 3 months later, Julie stood at the window of her office, her father's office, now truly hers, and watched the sun set over Manhattan. The city glittered like a promise, all light and shadow and infinite possibility.
So much had changed.
Clark International stock had not only recovered but reached record highs. The ethics review had resulted in 6 executive dismissals and a complete restructuring of the board. The Malcolm Clark Foundation had already funded 15 programs across 12 countries. And Patricia Patterson was awaiting trial for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, and fraud. The doctor who'd helped her had turned state's evidence. Wei Xiao was fighting extradition from Beijing. Richard Sawyer had fled to a country without an extradition treaty, but his assets were frozen. Kronos Capital had dissolved like smoke once its leadership was exposed. Justice, it turned out, was slow but inevitable. You're brooding again. Larry's voice came from the doorway. Julie turned and smiled. He'd shed his suit jacket hours ago, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He looked tired and happy and real. 3 months, and she still wasn't used to the way her heart jumped when he walked into a room. I'm not brooding. I'm contemplating. That's just brooding with better vocabulary. He crossed to her, wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. What are you contemplating? Whether my father would be proud or horrified. Both, probably. You've turned his company into something he never imagined. It was true. Under Julie's leadership, Clark International had shifted focus. Still profitable, more so than ever, but with a conscience. They'd implemented industry-leading parental leave policies, raised minimum wages across all divisions, established mentorship programs for employees from disadvantaged backgrounds. The business press called it stakeholder capitalism. Julie called it not being a sociopath. The Wall Street Journal wants another interview, Larry said. Janet Reeves specifically. She's writing a feature on the new generation of CEOs. Tell her yes, but only if she promises not to ask about my love life. She's definitely going to ask about your love life. Then you'd better have a good answer prepared, Mr. President. Larry had taken to his new role like he'd been born for it. Turned out, giving him more authority just made him more effective. The European division had expanded into 3 new markets. The Asian partnerships, handled ethically this time, were thriving. He spun her around to face him. I do have an answer prepared, actually.
Oh,
But I need to ask you something first. His expression went serious. Are you happy, Julie? Really happy? Not just surviving or fighting or proving yourself. Actually happy. She considered the question. 3 months ago, she would have said happiness was a luxury she couldn't afford. That CEOs didn't get to be happy, they got to be powerful, successful, feared. But her father had been all those things, and he'd died alone. I'm happy, she said honestly. Exhausted and stressed, and probably developing an ulcer from the Tokyo negotiations.
but yes.
Happy. Good. Because I'm about to make things complicated. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Julie's breath stopped. Before you panic, Larry said quickly, this isn't what you think. I know it's too soon. We've only been together 3 months. We work together. There are optics and board considerations and… Larry, you're rambling. I know. I never ramble. You make me ramble. He opened the box. Inside was a key. Simple, silver, unmarked. It's a key to my apartment. I want you to have it. I want you to have a space that's yours in my life. No pressure, no timeline. Just the option. When work is overwhelming and the penthouse feels like a gilded cage, you have somewhere else to go. Somewhere that's just us. Julie took the key. It was warm from being in his pocket. You're giving me a key to your apartment. I'm giving you a key to my life. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I know we did this backward. Boss and employee, lies and truth, corporate warfare before our first real date. But I don't care about backward. I care about forward. And I want you in my forward. That was possibly the worst romantic speech in history. I know. I'm better with spreadsheets. Lucky for you. I think it's perfect. She kissed him. Soft and sure and full of promise. I love you, Larry Davis. Even though you're terrible at romance and you still think my charity work is just strategic brand positioning. I never said that. You absolutely said that. Last week. During the budget meeting. I meant it as a compliment. She laughed, and it felt like freedom. Like the weight she'd carried her whole life had finally lifted. I love you too, Larry said. Even though you cry at board meetings and rename conference rooms after your favorite novels and once approved a $10 million expenditure because the proposal had a puppy photo on it. That puppy photo was very compelling, and the proposal had merit. The proposal was for office plants. Very important plants. He kissed her again, deeper this time. The kind of kiss that promised later, when they weren't in an office with glass walls and curious employees walking past. When they pulled apart, Julie rested her forehead against his chest. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me. That night. When I was nobody and nothing. You saw me anyway. You were never nobody. You were always you. I just had to catch up. Her phone buzzed. Sophie, probably. Or Richard with another legal update. Or Janet Reeves confirming the interview. Julie ignored it. For once, the empire could wait. Come on, she said, taking Larry's hand. I'm leaving early today. You are? The woman who worked through Thanksgiving is leaving before sunset. I'm visiting my father's grave. I do it every Friday now. Tell him about the week. The victories. The disasters. The fact that I haven't burned down his legacy yet. Want company? Always. They walked out together, past assistants who smiled knowingly, past executives who'd stopped questioning their relationship months ago, past the portrait of Malcolm Clark that hung in the executive corridor. Julie paused in front of it. Her father looked stern in the painting. Powerful. Alone. I'm doing it differently, Dad, she said softly. I'm letting people in. I'm asking for help. I'm building something that includes love along with profit margins.
I know you didn't do it that way.
But I hope, you'd understand why I have to. Larry squeezed her hand. And somewhere, Julie imagined her father was watching. Maybe proud, maybe confused, probably both. But definitely seeing her. Really seeing her.
For the first time.
6 months after that, Clark International was named Fortune's most innovative company and Forbes' best place to work. 1 year after that, Julie and Larry got married in a small ceremony with 20 people. Sophie was the maid of honor. James gave Julie away. 2 years after that, the Malcolm Clark Foundation opened its 100th program, a scholarship fund for children of service workers. Cleaners, janitors, maintenance staff. The invisible people who kept the world running. Julie announced it at the opening ceremony, wearing a simple dress and flats, standing in front of a crowd of families whose lives would change because someone had finally seen them. "My father built an empire," she said. "But empires are just buildings and money. What matters is what you do with them. Who you lift up. Who you see when everyone else is looking away." She looked at Larry, standing in the front row. At Sophie, filming on her phone. At James, who was definitely crying. "I used to think I had to choose between power and humanity. Between success and kindness. Between being my father's daughter and being myself." She smiled. Turns out, the real power is choosing both. Being both. Building an empire with a conscience. The applause was thunderous. And that night, in the apartment they now shared, Julie and Larry sat on the couch with takeout Chinese food and terrible reality TV. No board meetings. No corporate crises. No empires to save. Just two people who'd found each other in the chaos and decided to build something better. "Happy?" Larry asked. Julie curled into his side. "Completely. Even though you're probably the most powerful woman in Manhattan and you're eating $8 lo mein? Especially because of that. Because power wasn't about money or titles or corner offices. Power was choosing your own path. Being brave enough to be vulnerable. Building something that mattered. And loving someone who saw you, really saw you, even when you were on your knees with a mop and a bucket. Especially then." "Thank you," Julie whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me that night. For fighting for me. For loving me." Larry kissed the top of her head. "Always." And in the glittering city outside their window, a billion lights promised a billion possibilities. But Julie had everything she needed right here.
Love. Purpose.
Hope. And a future built not on her father's legacy, but on her own. That was the real empire. And it was just beginning.
The end.
What an incredible journey. From a cleaner with a secret to a CEO who changed everything. If this story touched you, moved you, or made you believe in second chances, drop a comment below and tell me your favorite moment. And please hit that subscribe button. I have so many more stories like this coming your way. Stories about love, redemption, hope, and the courage to be who you really are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reading. And remember, you're stronger than you think, braver than you know, and worthy of every good thing coming your way. Until the next story,